Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Reviews, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. I am your host and marketing manager here, Mackenzie, and I'm joined today by a fantastic panel because we're going to be talking about a really wonderful play that's called Pipeline. It's written by. Oh, let's see if I can do it. Dominique Morisseau. Morisseau, there we go. Perfect. Yes, Dominique Morisseau, and it is directed by Lileana Blain-Cruz. So with me today to discuss this really unique play that can be found on Broadway HD. That's where we're doing a lot of our productions now is on Broadway HD. And so with me to do that is, first off, we have a lady who has joined us already for an interview with Ryan. She's been a Zoom performance aficionado here now, and she's not related to Christopher Plummer. We're not sure. We don't know. It is Alicia Plummer. Hello, Alicia.
Hi, happy to be here.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
It's nice to be back, and I'm ready to review.
Perfect. And what is in your cup today?
I have just water. A lot of water.
I love your cup. It's so sparkly.
It is.
It's perfect. I love that. Next, we have the first person I ever met when I went to York University on our tour way back in August of 2012. And that is none other than my friend, my DT survivor, Mr. Andrew Puaru. Hello, Andrew.
What an introduction. Thanks, Mac.
I know. Hello. Yes, we've been through a lot together during our times.
Yes, we have. And we share more now.
We do. We do. We are no longer just York survivors. We have gone on to do many a great thing.
Well, at least one of us.
That's true. I mean, your wonderful performance in that Acting Shakespeare production you did was fantastic. I remember seeing that on a Friday night. It was quite good.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. And you're also going through to get your double major in psychology, right?
Yes, I was silly enough to go back to York. I apparently didn't have enough, even though I thought I did. So, lessons learned.
I'm sure your psychological knowledge will be quite beneficial for this episode.
Oh, hopefully so.
Yes, exactly. And what's in your cup today, Andrew?
I have a can today. So it's a blueberry ale wheat beer. I've never tried it. I haven't even opened it yet. So we're gonna see together how I react to this. But yeah,
I'm excited.
That's what I've gotten thus far.
I love that. And we have our wonderful literary manager, as well as our resident dramaturg, and also the co-producer, I'm now dubbing you, Ryan, of the Cup. You are none other than Mr. Ryan Borochovitz. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Mac. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. What's in your cup today, good sir?
I just regular old orange pico tea, but I'm drinking it from my Cup of Hemlock cup. So how about that?
We As have merch. Am I.
Oh,
I'm drinking my Earl Grey.
Nice.
What a coincidence.
Yes, in our official The Cup cup. If you'd like one, let us know. We will happily send you one. Yes, exactly. And make a great Christmas gift, let me tell you. I know what my family's getting for Christmas this year.
The best gift.
Exactly. But let's do this. Let's dive into this wonderful play called Pipeline. So first off, we have our kickoff question, as always, is which character do we feel was best performed? And Alicia, I want to start with you.
Okay, I started off. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I think my favorite performance of Pipeline was probably the character who played Xavier, which was Morocco Amari. Mm-hmm. Even though he was in the play the least, I found his presence so powerful. And the second he entered Naya's classroom, my eyes were just on him. And I felt like some of the actors were chewing their words a bit, and I found it slightly distracting the way they were overpronouncing certain things. And it might have to do with me watching the play from my computer and not being physically in the theater. Mm-hmm. But Morocco Amari, he just I just love the way he used his body and like just the presence. And when he was with his when Xavier was with the son Amari,
not to be confused.
Yeah, not to be confused.
Yes.
Characters now. So the character Xavier is with the son Amari, which is also the character's name. That scene, oh my goodness, just I was taken away. And even though, again, he didn't speak that much, but his stillness, his energy, and that one time when he actually raised his voice, like I didn't necessarily like his character, but I liked the way the actor played Xavier. So that's my answer.
I agree. You know what? He reminded me a lot of, if you ever watched clips of James Earl Jones in the play Fences, it's that same type of presence, like just that physical presence of someone on stage. Like anytime he did come on stage, you listened and the camera was just drawn to him.
Yes, I agree.
And you totally got his frustration as a father. Like you totally understood that parental frustration where it's like, I don't know what to do, and we're definitely gonna get into that scene for sure, because that does tie into some questions we have. But like he totally brought that character, and he didn't just play it as like the stereotypical hard ass parent. Like he had heart there, but he was just, you could see that internal struggle working the entire time. It was wonderful, wonderful. Andrew, I see you nodding. So who is your person that you want to give a shout out to?
So you know what? I knew this question was coming, and just watching the play, I was like, this is not going to be an easy question to answer. They all brought such incredible skill and energy, and it was just overall the play was incredibly well acted. As far as picking one, I actually have to go with the character Omari, played by, and I'm going to butcher this, and I apologize, so feel free to help. Namir Smallwood.
Yeah,
so far with it. Okay, cool.
That sounds right.
Okay,
we'll go with that.
If he's listening and it's incorrect, please let me know.
Get in the comments.
Yes, exactly. Let me know in the comments.
You did a great job, but please correct us.
Yeah. But there's one thing that I personally don't feel like I have as an actor, and it's just this ability to have this very restrained energy and then gradually build. And it was the moment with Omari and his father Xavier that I think that you had mentioned, Alicia, that he just brought that for me. And the whole play, he had this like pent up, very steady aggression, and it just came out in that scene. And it was so incredible to watch from a performance perspective, how he just, the entire monologue could have been angry, and it could have been just directed completely at Xavier. It could have been just loud and yelling, but it came from this very, very low place, and it built. And as an audience member, I felt that. I felt that frustration grow, and it just exploded out of him. And I think it was that moment, although throughout the play he had several, especially when he was reciting the poem. I thought that was just really cool to have him works through the play reciting the poem, which was a very important part to the overall, I think, story and message of the play. Just seeing him that, he had fantastic performance over the whole thing, but just that moment for me, that really like just kind of took it home. So it made him stand out, I think.
Yeah. For me, it was his eyes. He had those really compelling eyes that very few actors have, and that is a gift. Not many people can emote like that. Very few actors can just emote and convey so much with just a look in their eye. And this actor, Mr. Smallwood, was really fantastic. Ryan, though, who is your person that you want to give a comment to?
Yeah, like I will preface this the same way Andrew did, that I don't think there was a weak link in this whole cast. Like, everyone was so good and really had a hard time picking one. But I'm going to go with Jamie Lincoln Smith as Dune, because what a performance that. So it's tempting to just look at this as like a kind of comic relief character, because he kind of does bring that, especially in a lot of the heavier scenes. And like my absolute favorite moment of this entire play is actually his final moment on stage before the curtain call, where he is looking down Xavier in the face right in the middle of the hospital waiting room, and they're just having this like standoff moment, and they're like both holding their ground kind of. It's just, he brought that comedy in what could have been like a very intense moment, and I think we need that, especially since this is immediately before the scene that we were just all talking about, how intense it goes from there. But then I think, Jamie Lincoln Smith really, he brought in the seriousness when it was needed in like the Laurie big scene near the end there, and I really felt for this character who has probably the most difficult job, like in the school. Like a lot, the teachers have to deal with so much, but he's the one who actually has to be on the ball and intervene, and you could just see the stress in him, like in key moments. But the fact that it doesn't compromise his levity, I think, really adds depth to this character in a way that I think a lesser actor might have had a hard time balancing. So
yes,
I think he deserves a shout out for that.
I agree. But I will say my person is someone different than everybody here. Like, we all got this wonderful great shout out of people in the cast. And if we didn't shout you out, don't worry, you still were fantastic. But my person is Heather
Velasquez.
Yeah, Velasquez as Jasmine. Because that character, like Jamie's character, could very easily, especially with the way her dialect and her speech pattern, it could have easily fallen into caricature really fast. And the first few times you're watching her on stage, you're like, who is this character? She's trying to get on my nerves a bit. But then the more you listen to what she says and the more she talks, you go, oh, I'm doing exactly what you're talking about. Where it's like, because I'm talking this way and because I'm acting this way, you're looking at me this way. Meanwhile, what I'm saying is actually quite profound. So I actually had to pause and go, hold on a minute, I'm doing exactly what she's saying. All these people at this school do to her because of her speech pattern and the way she acts. So she really brought this human, three-dimensional character to the stage, even though she's a supporting character whose plotline really doesn't get a full-on proper wrap-up at the end. She still is fantastic every time she's on stage. Like that scene between Jasmine and the mom, like you could see once again, it's that struggle. She brought that struggle to the character of, I want to support Omari, but at the same time, I know he's not in a good place. What do I do? That conflict was there, and you felt it. Every time she spoke, you could see her mentally trying to piece together the situation and figure out her next step. It wasn't like it was a rehearsing where it's like, okay, now I move here, and now I say this line. Her performance was very organic on stage. And also, just the speed sometimes at which she talks. And yet you still understand every single word she says. That right there, like, that is craft. Because that's not easy. Like, a lot of us would probably get tripped up. But because she was able to articulate and speak at a really fast pace, that you understood exactly where she was going and her arguments in every situation. So, Heather, shout out to you.
Before we move on to the next question, I think, like, I know because everyone's so good in this play, we kind of want to pick people who we think maybe others won't and really give a shout out to some of like the smaller characters, but I really think a big applaud has to go to Karen Pittman as well as Naya, because she really does carry this entire show. And I get the temptation to pick one of the smaller characters, but I think she did an excellent job as well.
She grounds that show.
Yes.
She's the grounding force of that entire piece. She starts the play, and she's one of the last voices you hear on stage of the night. And every time she has a monologue, once again, it's just that scene, like that plea she does to the board at the end, or plea to the audience that is supposed to be the board. You would think that is her child on stage that she is pleading for.
She was heartbreaking every single time, even when she was angry. Like you knew it was just coming from this place of love, and that's I think definitely a credit to her acting, because it just it just really showed how well she could project this deep desire to be heard and to understand her child and what the child needs. It was, yes, I totally agree, Ryan. That shout out should definitely go to Karen Pittman for sure.
Yes. Karen, shout out to you. Okay, let's head into now what was our favorite production or design element of this piece. Ryan, you can start this one.
Okay. I really love the projections in this. Now, I know this is kind of complicated because of the fact that we are watching this in like a very slick pro shot version that is well edited, and a lot of what would be experienced as projections to the audience we are given to full screen. But I think knowing that it is projections, and I do appreciate the filmmakers cutting back to the version of it that is projections in these interstitial scene transitions, is that it really kind of like grounds the piece in an interesting way, because this is a work of fiction. It's a play by a playwright just kind of coming up with this new scenario, but this looks like documentary footage of what's actually going on in these inner city schools. And to cut between that really like authorizes the sense of authenticity to the story and gives us a sense of, yeah, sure, this is like a quippy dialogue between these fictional characters, but look, here's what it's actually representing, and kind of creating that really, moves the scenes along in a way that does strengthen everything he's talking about. And they also like intensify the action that's going on. Like there was one transition where it was just children fighting, and like that, I think really, and that I believe came right before the scene when Laurie broke up the fight. So it is, it's telling the story in the scene transitions, which could just be blackout, move the furniture. So, and then speaking of the projections in general, like the use of the projection of the poem on the chalkboard is really well done. I like that it kept the original while she's lecturing on the two versions of the published poem, that it actually did keep the format of the original in the projection, but made it look like it was written on the chalkboard and it is like being composed in real time as Omari's saying the lines. So just the projection design was really well done, and I think it deserves a shout out for that.
That chalkboard was right out of Matilda. The magic chalkboard. I was like, that's the first thing that came to my mind in that section. I was like, Matilda.
And there's also the mention later when they were, it's when Naya and Xavier are talking about how Omari shoved him right into a smart board, which is just like a clever line because it shows the class difference between the public school and the private school that has a smart board. But in a way, the public school has a kind of smart board in the staging by virtue of the projection, which
I never thought of it that way.
I don't think that's intentional, but it's just something I think about, I guess, while watching this, or didn't really think about until my second viewing, because I remembered that line. And then like, hey, that kind of looks like a smart board, or at least behaves like one for the sake of theater.
True. Very, very true. Alicia, how about you? What was your favorite production element?
I have two that I really liked, and they're short. But I really liked that there wasn't a lot of set pieces within the play. It was easy to just go from one scene to the next. And if there was a long transition, we were watching those little clips of classrooms and things. So I'm assuming the audience was also watching that too, just not the way we were watching it from the website. So I just really liked the use of the minimal set pieces and props. And I also liked I felt like there was an element of, there was music playing throughout some of the transitions. And it made me think that I could definitely see this play as a musical. And I just like the smooth jazz vibe, the poetry vibes. So I think I had like three different things, but
I could totally see this as like a spoken word musical, like kind of like like that type of smooth sound. I definitely this definitely wouldn't be like a big sound musical. This would be a very like low key, small orchestra, if any, like spoken word.
And it definitely has elements of that for sure.
Yeah, I felt like the characters were so passionate within the story, and I felt like at any moment they could like burst into song. So I think just that element of musicality in the play was very well done.
Mm-hmm. Yes, wonderful. Well, I'm going to piggyback off you, Alicia, just because I had the set. That was my favorite production element, because that brick wall, the minute I saw that, I was like, oh, that's my high school. We had literally that type of brick facade in our school. Like those were the walls. Mind you, we had murals and everything painted on them, but it was like a brick wall painted with beige paint. That's what those walls were, because it was a school built back in the 60s. Like my mom had gone to that high school too, so been around a long time. But the wall, that beautiful wall, I was like, you moved you so many different places and was so versatile with very, as you said, very minimal set. Really chairs. There was the chairs in the hospital room, the couch. I think the biggest set was the teacher lounge, where it was the mini fridge and a table. But everything else, it was such a small set, but yet you moved through so many places and it felt real and lived in. It was wonderful watching that set. So that set, the minute I saw it, I was like, this is whoever, who designed that set? Hold on.
Set was Matt Saunders.
Perfect. Yes.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Matt, thank you. You were wonderful. You really created a really versatile set there. So bravo to you. Andrew, round us out here. What was your favorite element?
So you piggybacked off Alicia. I have to piggyback off Ryan, because it was also the projections for me that really was just a very hypnotic kind of element. It, as Ryan said, it really brought the story together, because you saw real life examples of exactly what was happening in the story. So it wasn't as if the playwright pulled it out of thin air. No, this is happening. This is now. You can find this stuff on YouTube. So it was really cool in that aspect, and from a very I'll call it personally speaking, shallow aesthetic. I really liked that chalkboard scene. I thought it was just a very clever use of projections. I was very well done, because it looked like chalk, and the moment that chalk was erased, it looked like smudge marks, and I thought, holy smokes, you went for the detail. It could have just as easily been text. It could have been Times New Roman on a board, and we wouldn't have complained. But they went that extra mile. They made it look like chalk. They made it look like a classroom chalkboard that got erased. If I'm not mistaken, I will not even Hannah Wazalewski. I butchered that, definitely. But the projectionist, if I'm not mistaken, actually won an award for her work, for her projections in the play, and I think it was
well deserved for sure.
Absolutely well deserved.
Also,
yes, go on.
Something you said just a minute ago that got me thinking is about how you can find this on YouTube. That even adds a whole extra layer to this recurring motif of someone took a video, it's gonna go viral, with both of Omari shoving the teacher and Laurie hitting the kid with the broom. And so that even, I didn't even think of that until you said it just now, but the fact that this footage probably is pulled from YouTube really just authorizes that layer even further.
Absolutely. And it's scary, and definitely it comes as a shock value because of that, because it's absolutely something that happens. There's a reason phones aren't allowed. There's a reason why you hear about this all the time, because it's happening, and it's being shown on stage. I will add in this really quick thing, because it was recorded and we saw a recorded version. I feel like a lot of the production elements are lost on me, so I didn't get to fully appreciate them. One of the things that may have just been an accident, and the way that the Lincoln Center is set up, but that raked audience, I just thought there was something very cool about that. I don't know if that was an add-in or if that's how the theater is, but I think that's
how the theater is.
Even better. It just felt like a classroom. It felt like a lecture hall.
Oh, I got the York psychology hall vibes watching that, where it's those big amphitheater audience, auditoriums.
Absolutely. And it almost felt like the audience were students. And the audience were the students that she was talking to, teaching about the life on the street, the poem, and what's happening. Even as the play progressed, it was kind of going, oh, we're learning what's happening, we're learning what's wrong, we're seeing before our eyes, we're looking at this picture. And at the end, when she's giving the speech to the committee, we're the people that she's talking to. So again, if that's how it's set up, it worked.
I think I have to believe it is, because there's a textual question we have coming up that will dive deeper into audience interactions like that. So don't let that thought go away.
Keep percolating.
Yeah, exactly. We're coming back to it. But in the meantime, Andrew, let's have you kick off this next question, which is, what was the weakest part of the production?
What was the weakest part of the production? Again, this was a question that I knew was coming, but I couldn't put my finger on.
Not a bad thing.
Yeah,
the production's so good, you can't think of something that's weak.
I watched it twice, and I was looking for something that I really disliked, and I couldn't put my finger on it. It was just it all kind of came together for me. Perhaps, and I say this perhaps, knowing that it's a recording of it, and maybe the lighting. There was some times where I was just like, this is not the mood that I feel, like the hospital scene. And I know that was a really intense scene, but like I was just like, there were aspects of the lighting that I was like, we're on stage. It feels like a stage. I can't personally recall if they brought up the house lights in that particular one, but I feel like they did during the classroom scene. And that's almost what I wanted to see, because I wanted to see that, like, that hospital lighting, and the fluorescent lighting. Thank you. That's the word, where it was, where we're just kind of like waiting, because that fluorescent lighting has such an impact, at least personally on me, where it feels like we're waiting for bad news, we're waiting for good news, but it just brings out that tension. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, just to kind of close off the thought, it's just like, I can't recall if that was there. I didn't feel that in the lighting, in the sound, in the acting, absolutely. But for me, at least in that perspective, the lighting kind of just, it wasn't there. But again, it was a very hard call on that one.
I think, oddly enough, the one scene where I do feel like we did have that harsh fluorescence was in the teacher lounge scenes. That really had that hospital feel to it, like very clinical waiting room, almost even like a prison. Like, so yeah, it's kind of weird that, and I don't really recall either if the actual hospital scene had those lights either, but the fact that I have the image burned in my head of the lighting in the teacher's lounge scenes more so than the hospital scene probably says a bit about this. So interesting that you brought that up.
Ryan, since you were already going, what's your weakest production element?
So I also had a very hard time picking this one, because this production is amazing, and like it feels mean to nitpick at anything in it, but I do have something, and I feel awful even saying it. It's aspects of the script, actually, which, like, this is a very strong script. I will preface all of this with that, like, very well written. And this is going to sound so stupid when I say this, because my critique is almost that it's too well written, if that makes sense. Because
I see what you're saying, though. Continue.
Absolutely.
So basically, everyone is so clever all the time is a thing that works really well in some scenes, but not great in others. Like, this really felt like if Aaron Sorkin was better at writing people of color, he would have written this play. Like, but yeah, so like everyone's just like very clever. They're quipping all the time, and it felt like, on one hand, we're going for this very like stark realism with, I think, a lot of the way this play is composed and presented. But then when people are just like absurdly cartoonishly, like always knowing the right thing to say, it kind of heightens it to this more poetic sense that kind of is in a bit of a tension with that stark realism. And I will, again, feel really bad saying this, and it's a very excellent script, but I actually don't even know if I would say this is a script issue, or, well, one of it is, but I'll get to that in a second. But I kind of have two writing pet peeves that I will say this play did both of them. So one of them is, and this one definitely is the script, is that I don't like it when characters say something metaphorical and then explain it. that is like a very like, you know, new writer thing that you see a lot of, that a lot of people like kind of learn not to do. And I'm not saying Dominique Morisseau is a new writer or by any sense, but like this is just kind of, yeah. So, and I get that it was kind of handled in a way that, at least in the one scene I'm thinking of in particular, it was done as like flirting about Mr. Peterson's science class between Omari and Jasmine. That they talked about, you're a metamorphic rock and you're a lunar eclipse and you turn me on and off like a stove. You mean like a faucet? No, like a stove, because I'm all hot and heavy. Like, it's, metaphors have poetic significance and you can just use them on their own terms, but the second you have to explain it, it seems like you're questioning, will the audience get it? And that typically does rub me the wrong way. I think it wasn't terribly handled here, but it is something that I take slight issue with. Like, not in this play, but my least favorite example of this that I've seen is, if any of you, I haven't read the book, but if any of you have read or seen The Fault in Our Stars, the John Green thing, how there's the guy who's just like, he puts a cigarette in his mouth and like, oh no, you're a smoker. It's like, no, it's a metaphor, you see. I don't light the cigarette. I don't give it the power to kill me. And like, you could have just done the thing and not explained it. You made it worse by explaining it. So like, not as bad as that, but I did feel like there were moments where this play kind of dabbled in the same thing. The other pet peeve that I have is, and this one, I don't know if I can fault the writing for it. It might have been the directing more so, but because I haven't read the script of this play, but it's when a character makes a joke and the other characters on stage laugh at their joke. Because that is something that's acceptable in real life. Because when someone says something funny, yes, of course, they're doing it for your benefit and you laugh. But in the theater, that's basically just the equivalent of a laugh track. And it's sort of does the same thing as the metaphor explaining, because it's telling the audience, see, that was funny, you should laugh. And there was only one moment that I noticed of it in this play, but it was when Laurie compares her old Oldsmobile to an ugly husband that nobody wants it but me, and that's why it works for us. Ha ha ha. And then Naya and Du start laughing too. Ha ha ha, you're so funny, Laurie. And I'm like, okay, this is just, it feels like our author is congratulating herself for making a joke, and like, let the audience do that for you. So again, fantastic, well-written play, but doesn't mean there aren't little things that I didn't love in the script itself.
Those are very good. I didn't even think about that, but yes, Ryan, very good point.
Yes. Excellent, excellent points.
Very good points.
I'm so sorry, because I love the script so much. It's great, but...
Oh, it is. But you know what? Now that you're saying it, like, that scene with Omari and Jasmine in their dorm room was a scene that kind of, like, definitely, like, made the hair on the back of my neck kind of stand up, because I'm like, what's happening? Why are they talking like this? Because I don't know people that go about explaining their relationships, no matter how smart they are, in terms of rocks. Like, I don't.
Rocks and eclipses.
But Andrew, that's what we do. Like that was our entire DT experience.
Okay, I don't know anybody outside of DT that does.
I will say, like, there is like dramaturgical function to this. The fact that they are so engaged by Mr. Peterson's science class, they frequently refer to that as like the one good thing about the school, and that it is kind of like showing the education system and the difference between public and private at work. But that does make an interesting contrast to the English teacher that we'll surely talk about later in more detail. But yeah, like, it just, little things like that irk me, and it's a shame when I like everything else about the script so much.
Fair. Alicia, what's your weakest production element or element of the show?
Okay, I'm sort of jumping off of what Ryan has brought up in terms of directing, and the specific moment that Ryan brought up about the laughing thing, that was also in my mind too, and that was so uncomfortable. But like, I enjoyed the play, but I kind of brought this up earlier. I felt like the actors were chewing their words at times to get their lines out, and it might just be a director thing, or it might be the way the play is written so poetically. So I think I found it a little distracting, because it's just like, just speak it, just say the lines with. I almost felt like a bit of the intention was lacking from the lines, and it was just words at times, not throughout the whole thing. There's so many powerful moments within the play, and there were moments that did like make me stop and think and like shook me to my very core. Things like that did happen, but yeah, I think the chewing of the words just, and I noticed it a lot in Jasmine, and I get it, it's a character choice, but it felt like it was just a little too much. But the actor did do Jasmine to I think the best of her ability at the same time. So I'm kind of like, yeah. Also, something else that bugged me a lot was the way the actors would balance out the stage. This is also a directing thing, just to make sure someone's balancing. Like I would see Naya go to one side and then Jasmine would immediately cross. And I'm like, oh, it's so obvious. There's no motion going behind that cross. Like, why are you moving? It was just, I found that just painful as an actor. I'm like, can you move with intention? So I just found that really bugged me. I think that's it. It's a pretty good production. Just certain tiny little directing things that like rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah. No, like absolutely, Alicia. Like definitely because direction was my that's my piggyback from you. But yeah, that's definitely a pitfall of being in a thrust stage, is that sometimes you just gotta move the people to get the views right, and it's like, well, how do I do this without just being like, you move this diagonal, so I gotta move on this other axis to make sure that sight lines work. And it's a really tricky thing, and you're right, like there are times where it just felt like I'm moving now because my director told me I have to keep this alley, like I have to stay in line with this alley to make sure this looks like people can view this. So yeah, absolutely. But I would say for me, the direction part that I kind of rewatching it was sometimes these actors who were playing very human characters 99% of the time fell into caricature. Like, especially Laurie. The character of Laurie, a lot, like, I would say this is, I don't know if this is the actor or the direction, but a lot of times she came across as the loud New Yorker. Like, you know, like, God damn it! Like the New York Knicks, like Seinfeld. That type of thing, it could become really. There were moments where they slipped into caricature versus human experiencing this. Like one of Laurie's best moments is when she isn't yelling; it's after she's done the pounding of the head on the table, and she stops and she has a quiet moment where she just goes, "He was going to kill him," and she didn't do it with the heavy accent. She wasn't yelling. She was speaking, and there were times where other characters fell into that, like Heather. I loved you. I thought you gave a very strong performance as well as Jasmine, but Jasmine too, when she taught with the way she spoke and things like that. At times it could fall, and sometimes it did fall into caricature versus humans. Where because there's some like Naya throughout the entire piece is such a human grounding tentpole point of the story, and Omari for the majority of the time he was very human, but there were times where like even he kind of fell into a bit of a caricature trap of like the angsty teen where it's like, Mom, you don't get me. Like I'm thinking of that scene between mom and son where she's like, well, explain it to me. I can't explain it. Like, you know, it's, I guess that type of heightened teen angst where nothing gets that actor once again. He looked really old to play that part. Where it's like trying to get back into that youthful, angsty energy that we all had. We all experienced teen angst where the world didn't get me. And at times you can fall into that trap too. So I would say there were times where, I don't know if it's an acting or directing, I'm going to err on side of direction because it's the director's job to catch when actors or performers are doing that type of moment where it's like, stop, like, hold on, or like you're doing your notes in your notebook where you're running the scene being like, okay, hold on, you fell into caricature here, let's bring it back, let's make sure we're doing the honest truth, not what we think somebody who is in the situation would sound or act like. So for me, that's my 1 week part, is that at times some of these characters fell into caricature versus staying human. And it stood out because 99% of the time they were three-dimensional human characters. It was just that 1% of the time where they kind of dipped into there and I went, caught it. So.
I wonder if it's also partly piggying back off of Ryan. I wonder also if it's sometimes just kind of how the script demands the actors to be. Like as a play, especially because it was an hour and a half. It was an hour and a half. My God, it felt like so much longer.
In a good way.
Yes, absolutely.
that could be misconstrued, yes. But yes, it's a lot happens in an hour and a half.
Exactly. It was just the whole thing kind of hit you like a train because it was all coming to a head at once. It was this story that took place over a few days that just kind of hits you in the most intense moments. Yeah. So I wonder if the reason they fell into character and the reason why they kind of went into such like heightened energies and they kind of plateaued at that point is because it was just kind of how the play's written. I can't make a comment on that, but it could be.
That's definitely something that, like, now I really do want to read this script to find if there is a certain direction within the script that the writer gave, or like I definitely would love to now read this script and kind of dive a little bit deeper and see how that is, because you're right, the language is very poetic, and that can sometimes, and because of the as you said, the way we're just jumping into these high tension moments throughout, like there's really very like just thinking about the Lori scene after she's hit the kid with the broom, like there's no real lead up into that moment. Like Naya's eating in the lunchroom, and all of a sudden you're in to this, you're into this really high tension moment. So yeah, like that definitely can be it. Like well spotted, Andrew. Well spotted. I applaud you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. Do we have any more notes for this, or are we ready to jump into our next question?
I think we're good.
All right, let's do it. So, do we feel this production is worth the watching? Alicia, you can start this one.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's definitely worth a watch. I feel like it's educational for students, for teachers, young adults, older adults. But yeah, watching it, I just felt like I was learning a lesson in class. That's probably because it's in a school, so that it gives that vibe. And it's powerful. It has some powerful elements to it. It has some powerful discussions that are talked about. And I'm sort of being vague-ish because I know we're going to get into other questions that might propel more conversation. But yes, it's definitely worth a watch. The actors are strong. The story, I find the story strong. And the script, the way the actors respond back and forth, it kind of has like a very quick pace, and it's poetic as well. Like if there's like a rhythmic timing. So I always felt like I was engaged. I never felt like what just happened. So I also feel that way. I want to say it's an easy watch. It's not an easy watch, but it's easy to follow if you're paying once you're in. So yes, I think it's worth watching.
Yeah, wonderful. Andrew.
Absolutely. I think just the fact that we all had a hard time picking our best performance moment, or a hard time picking out what we didn't like about the play, just kind of goes to show you, like, it's totally worth the watch. It was so well done. It was so well performed. The script is really well. At the very least, most of the script is so well written. And like I said, it's an hour and a half. It's a quick watch. It's not Shakespeare where you're sitting in a seat for 2 hours or 2.5 hours plus. It's really quick. It's a beautiful mixture of comedy and drama, which I think is just like where personally speaking, all the learning can happen, because it's like breathe and intake. It's and the message, it just kind of, it has so much so much texture to it, for lack of a better word. It's I'm gonna start just talking into nonsense. But yes, and to answer your question, yes, definitely worth the watch.
Love that. Ryan?
I don't know how much more I can even add. Yes, 100%, it's worth the watch.
As a TA, would you show it to your students?
Oh, well, okay, see, usually when you ask me that question, it's when we were doing our Shakespeare series from Stratford on film, and that I would always contextualize that in the thought process of, well, if we're studying Hamlet, is this the Hamlet I would show to the students, or would I go with Brana or whatever? But I think this play is fantastic and should be on more syllabi for like contemporary drama classes. And if we are studying this play anyway, then yes, of course, watch the production. Don't just read it on the page. Always, I feel like my answer to this question is almost always yes, it's worth the watch, because I'm a big advocate for watch as many plays as you can. And even with some that I have been more lukewarm on in the past, which this one certainly isn't, I'm like, yeah, watch it. And what didn't you like about it? What can you learn from it? But I think this is an excellent, really like current relevant piece that a lot of people would do well to be exposed to. And if my biggest problem with it is some parts are just too cleverly written, I think it's a pretty good play.
Well said. I mean, I would say yes, watch it, because once again, like, these characters in the story is sadly not one that we get a lot of. Like unfortunately, this isn't a particular setting or story that we get. And it's a wonderful piece of theater that is telling a very unique story that audiences, particularly upper class white audiences who make up a majority of the Broadway major theater watching audience, have never seen. So the fact that they get to go out and see this and see something so different than what they're normally seeing, like another production of Hamlet, is fantastic. Like, this is just such a wonderful story to be told, and it's so relatable, because even if, like, to be honest, I did not, like, yes, I went to a public high school, but I most certainly was not in the school that Naya worked at. But yet, just the humanity and the authenticity of the story, that whether you are a parent or like you have a friend that struggles with the things that Omari struggles with, you can relate on some level to these characters and their struggle. And I think that's why this is such a great universal piece that transcends just one particular group or one particular audience. It's a wonderful piece. And I think what I would love to see is this done as a touring production, traveling to high schools across the United States and across Canada. Because, I mean, we all remember in high school, we all had to sit through the anti-bullying touring show that would come through. But, like, this is so much more powerful and relates to both staff and student, that this could you could spawn a lot of conversation. And I would absolutely put it in the drama and English syllabi for high school students, because this is very powerful. So I would absolutely say, yes, watch this, show it to your friends, get your Broadway HD subscription. It's very affordable.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Not yet, anyway. But yes, please watch this production. It's fantastic. We go. Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick? Because
yes,
you said something, Mackenzie, that made me think. Because you said that you can see this play touring across Canada and the US. Mm-hmm. I also can see this play touring around the world in different languages, because it's about concepts that people maybe want to hear about or other people can relate to. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I could totally see this going like international if they were thinking that deep. So that's
absolutely. Absolutely. You could totally see this going like this. We all have schools. We all have private and public school systems in many Western countries around the world that you always can relate to these types of things. It's such a relatable situation. And I'm sure every parent who sees this would do exactly the same thing Naya does, right or wrong at the end, but pleading to the board for her son. Like, you could see any parent doing that. Like, you're right. Like, this is an international piece that should be performed everywhere, because it has something to say, something for people to really grab onto. Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to segue into more play-based questions. This is more where we dive into the text of the piece. So the first question is one that Andrew actually kind of already was hinting into earlier. So it is that in this production's original program, the playwright Dominique
Morisseau,
thank you, included a note titled "Playwright's Rules of Engagement," in which she encouraged respectful audience participation. What might this element add to the theatrical event? Ryan, as a playwright yourself, you can jump in on this one first.
Yeah, so I have mixed feelings about this. Not conceptually, sort of just in relation to this play in particular. Because I like the idea in theory of theater is an engagement between what's going on stage and the audience, and I think any productions that do try to strengthen those bonds instead of just mimetically sealing the piece behind the fourth wall, they get an A+ in my book usually. But I feel like this production, despite making it clear to the audience that this is acceptable, I don't think the show itself is very inviting of it. I think a show that is telling its audience, please feel free to get involved and participate, needs to be more explicitly open to amendment, to use the definition of improvisation used by Frost and Yarrow. And this play doesn't feel like if someone were to shout out or do something, this play would just grind to a halt. I don't feel like there was that improvisational invitation or dynamic in there. Now granted, we are watching this in one particular filmed version of one evening's performance, but in the entirety of this showing, there was only one moment I could identify in which the audience did actually engage in that way, and that's when Naya says "morning class" at the beginning of the play, and they say "good morning." It's like all in unison, which felt just a little too perfect to be like. It almost felt like the film crew kind of goaded them into that one. But aside from that, I can't think of a single other moment of what we saw where this invitation was actually made good on. And I don't think the play is really open to it, even if the playwright theoretically wants it to be, because the other main moment where I can really see it being employed is in the We Real Cool poetry lecture scene, where Naya is teaching it and pointing out invisible students in the audience and answering their specific silent comments. And I think this would be a great moment if she could actually engage the audience. What do you think of this poem? And actually teach a lesson in the theater. But she is so rehearsed and scripted and ready to go with her silent and invisible interlocutors that there isn't the breathing room for the audience to participate. And I think that kind of remains consistent throughout the entire play. So I like the idea of opening it up, but I think the play has to be suited to it and has to make room for it. And if it doesn't do that, it kind of just strikes me as a bit of a gimmick. The fact that it is well publicized that this was part of the paratext of this play in this program note. So yeah, I have mixed feelings, I guess.
Alicia, for you also as a playwright, what were your thoughts on this?
I disagree slightly, or maybe a lot. But Ryan, I feel like you pointed out the parts where it did work. I think that made me think, yes. Well, there's only one part where they actually did audience participation at the beginning with Naya's question. And then with the We Real Cool poetry section, I was urgently awaiting some sort of audience participation with that section. And I think that would have made the play pop for me a bit more. And I think it's really cool that Dominique Morisseau has that option for the director to direct the actors in a way where they can participate with the audience. And I think for this play, it would work if there was more audience participation.
I agree. Sorry to No, please continue and go on.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think we're actually saying the same thing, because I agree that it would be great if it was, but in its current state in this production, which is the one that this program note was included in, it doesn't feel like that freedom was given, like, to the audience in the directing. So
right.
Even if an invitation is made in the program note, I would have loved it if there was room for that participation, but I'm not surprised that there wasn't more of it, because where would the audience have found the appropriate time to put it in, or to have their voices be heard?
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. So I wouldn't be able to imagine another place where the audience could jump in, because everything's so scripted, and there's the fourth wall is pretty much put right back up in the second that poetry scene is done. So I wouldn't want to see the audience participate at that point. Like, only the moments when Naya is talking directly to the class, that is when I would like to see the audience participate. So we do agree on that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we're saying the exact same thing, that we would like to see it, but I think it's telling that we don't see it, because I don't think this was directed in a way that really made good on that invitation. If it could have been done in a way where Naya pauses and be like, what do you think, class, audience? And actually, like, leave room. Like, you always hear these stories about, like, the debut production of Henry V, where after that great speech, the audience was so riled up that they climbed on stage to fight the French. And, like, what a great moment of theater that must have been. But I don't see any, like, the way this, like, scene in particular with the poetry is done, it doesn't feel like that invitation is really there. It kind of just seems like the program is giving lip service to an unkept promise.
I see. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think I'm done then. I think I said what I said.
Sure. Okay.
I hope I made sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like, Alicia, actually, I'll piggyback off you a little bit, because because for me, like, I think it was well set up that you could. Actually, this play reminded me a little bit of the play Doubt, where once again it's set in school, and because we don't get to actually see a lot of the students, the audience fills in that gap as well. So I think they were more going for, versus maybe like put your hand up and actually respond to her, is because the way the set was with that white wall and that set that was very sterile, so the lights actually reflected so you could see other audience members. It was more about being able to see and react and interact in that sense, versus like speaking interactions, because you're right, Ryan, like, there's very little time and very few scenes that actually allow you to interject verbally into the story, but you can absolutely give the performers ways to play off. Like, even there's the great moment, I had to rewind it because I found it so amusing, was there's the scene where Xavier, the dad, does the text me when she's awake moment, and you can see over his shoulder a woman actually hide her face because she doesn't want to be on camera. And it's one of these great kind of fourth wall break moments of the story, and because the lighting allowed you to see your other fellow audience members, you could react to moments. Like, I would have loved to have seen their reactions when Laurie is telling the story and about pounding the table, because that's it. Like, we'll get to that moment, because I had a very visceral response to talking about having your head cracked open, because I've had my head cracked open. So I had a very visceral physical response to that story. But I would have loved to have seen more of the audience. I would love for the camera to do a little bit more of catch the audience reacting to things, because I think that's where this piece can really work, is where because I think, Andrew, as you said, the way that it's built, the set is built, it feels like a lecture hall, where really, actually, I don't think you would even want stage lights. You could just do it in fluorescent so people could see each other at all times and react to each other. So if I'm sitting across that thrust looking at Alicia the whole time, her and I could have a totally different view of the situation, and I could see how she reacts to Laurie's story, and we could have very different reactions. It reminds me of when I went and saw Titus Andronicus at Stratford, and because the set was marble white, it reflected, so you could see everybody in the audience, including Christopher Plummer, sitting in the front row. So you could see everybody's reaction. So like there were certain moments where actually there was a little lady actually covering her head with her coat, and that just added to my enjoyment of the performance because I got a glee out of watching the audience react to this horrific story that was taking place on stage. So what I liked about the way they did this was that also I think because it's a film thing, you now have to get into rights of using somebody's likeness, where I don't know if maybe that kind of hindered. Where like, I don't know, if you did bring this into a daytime matinee, maybe the students were encouraged more to interact with Naya. I don't know. This is, once again, we're stuck behind a film lens of a moment. But I go with this play. I think gives more to it's basically more saying you can react and be more verbal in your reactions, like sounds and facial expressions. You don't have to sit there stoically in the dark. We're gonna let the actors in the audience see each other so they can react to this story together. So you really get that human mirroring experience, I think.
Yeah. I don't know if I would call that audience participation, though. And to me, it doesn't feel like that's just what theater is and does by virtue of being in a room with other people, and the thrust stage and the lit house, like makes that more acceptable. But I think if you have an invitation in the program to be feel free to participate, I don't think, I might make a face in reaction to the thing. That doesn't feel like audience participation to me. That's not like an actual like give and take between the stage and the audience any more so than any other theater show is.
Fair. I definitely think they could have gone further with that concept, but I don't know if they were limited because of film rights. And if you're going to be in the audience, you got to, again, we're actually going to have you your face on screen and you're actually going to be heard. I don't know if there's some rights or like that's a legal thing. I don't know.
Well, we can definitely see a lot of faces in the audience. Like, I don't know, did everybody who signed on to be in this particular audience have to like sign a release form to allow their face? Because we can see like all those people in the first few rows. We can pick out their faces. Certainly. I think, and it might just be because this is the filmed version. It's not like, we have a bunch of different, nights of the performance to choose from. And wow, people reacted differently every time. I can see maybe that there might have been a cinematic impulse to sand down the edges of audience participation. They had the good morning at the beginning to kind of show that, yes, this is part of the show. But if they had someone make a very loud reaction in it, that would forever be on the film, and the version that we and whoever subscribes to Broadway HD would watch would always have that interaction, and that would become part of the archive of this show in a way that, so I can see reasons why there wasn't more of it in this film version. I just think that, I really don't see a lot of space where those reactions, and specifically verbal reactions, could fit without being a disruption. And even if the actors kind of like pause and smile and be like, yes, this is okay, we invited this, it still just feels like it would only break the rhythm of this very razor sharp show. True.
Andrew, your thoughts?
I agree with all of you.
How Canadian of you.
I know, right? God damn it. But I totally agree. And I think, Matt, you hit it on the head when saying it's a recording. I think perhaps in live productions, the audience was totally invited in the classroom settings to chime in. And I think it would have totally added because it's a classroom setting. And I think Naya as a teacher almost invites the call outs, invites the interpretation. And I think, Ryan, as you said, from a cinematic point of view, on that particular recording, especially since we see the camera swoop in from behind Naya, and then we get that nice, clean view of the audience, I think it was almost planned that they went on this particular night. We're asking that's the only part where the audience participates in. Just for the sake of like it gets too cluttered, because I don't know how many cameras they have. They can't possibly catch the one person saying that offhand remark, and then Karen Pittman gets to react to that person. I think in that particular moment, it could have been staged. But again, to Alicia's point, I think there were totally opportunities where the audience could have participated, especially in the "We Real Cool" the poem. It just that totally was a point for people to chime in with comments that either were like really helpful or like, yes, getting that pimp game on could have been better phrased. Like that totally could have been something an audience member threw out. That could have happened in a past night. That could have been improvised on the spot. I think there are those opportunities, but at the same time, Ryan, I do also agree with you. Most of the play felt way too intimate to be to invite the audience to participate, at least in the verbal sense. Even I would argue in like that reactionary sense, as you would say, Matt. It's just there were too many moments that relied on us watching these characters like just be with each other and react with each other and figure out a relationship with each other. It was just the scene with Naya and Omari when Omari finally comes home. I can't picture anybody interrupting that. Naya has such a heartbreaking, like just breakdown, begging her son to explain to her what happened. What can I do? Why are you angry? I can't picture anyone saying something at that moment. So I think there are moments, but as an overall play, it just feels far too in the script. It's written this particular way and it has to occur this particular way to have the effects that it did. So again, I agree with all of you. So yeah,
there you go. Fair.
I also think I'm done.
Yep. Perfect. All right. Well, then let's get into some debates. Some really deep debates here because there were two major climactic moments of this play. There's the one plot involving Omari and his teacher, and there's another moment where Lori, a longtime teacher at this school, breaks up a fight by hitting the one student who's pounding the head of the other student with a broom. So we're going to go into both these situations and kind of see where we fall. So the first one is, was Lori right to hit a student with the broom to break up the fight, or as the security guard Dune points out, did the job in the situation kind of get the better of her? As someone who we can say is a veteran of this school and institution who has seen a lot, did she kind of overreact in this moment? So Andrew, I'll let you lead this one off since you wrapped up the last question.
So we're going with the Lori debate first.
Yeah, we're doing the Lori debate first.
You know what? Even like in both of these questions, I don't think I have a definitive answer because it really just depends on the perspective you take and the experience you have, which I think in the play, we just couldn't cover it. We couldn't cover Lori's experience as a teacher. We couldn't cover the incident itself. We couldn't watch that happen. We weren't supposed to watch that happen. We were supposed to just hear it. It just, I don't know. It just kind of shows that there is just too much within a specific incident to unfold it all. I'm inclined to agree with Lori because it is definitely described as life or death, but at the same time, it's, can you do that? Is that right? What's the fallout? But again, that could all be background noise. It's a really hard thing to answer, I think. I know teachers that kind of are on the job and they're like, sometimes you just have to like let it happen, because if you involve yourself, you're endangering yourself, you're endangering another student, and certainly hitting another student in the head with a broom is debatably, is that helping? He could have had his skull cracked open if his head was beating against the floor. But it's just such a hard thing to answer. But again, I'm inclined to say that Lori was in the right because it could have gone so much worse. But it really just shows how much the odds are stacked against everyone involved, which is the saddest part.
Yeah. I mean, I'll piggyback off you, Andrew, since nobody else is like jumping in for a piggyback. Because I too am on the fence with this moment. Though I am more inclined to lean of yes, she did what she had to do, because from her testimony, because that's all we get. Mm-hmm. We get her testimony, and she says it was clear the one student that was pounding the head of the other student was seeing red, basically. There was, like she said, I called to him, I followed every protocol that was in place, and there was no other solution toward me in this situation. I have an entire classroom malfunctioning, and it's in her eyes, it was life or death. Mm-hmm. And she took the action that she thought she had to do. And the only thing I can say is that, Andrew, you're right. She's lucky that when somebody is seeing red like that if you hit somebody like that they don't turn on you. And I mean that's something we were taught a lot in res life training, actually, was the whole thing of, if you see a situation that is escalating violently, it's your job to stand back, say, I see you, and I'm calling a higher authority, your campus security, whatever, to come and handle the situation. I'm seeing the situation, I'm on the phone, like making yourself known to the people in the situation, but not interfering, because, as they pointed out, you becoming involved now puts you in a much more compromised situation. So I get Dunn's point perspective, where he goes, you should have just followed the protocol and let the situation, no matter how horrible, play out, because now you're injecting yourself and you're endangering yourself as well. Because if student goes after you, then what happens to the rest of the class? You are there. And I couldn't imagine having to stand by and watch somebody's head get pounded into the ground. Like, this is where I had him, like, when she was doing that action in that moment, that's where I had a bit of a reaction, because as a child, I tried to fly down the stairs and crack my head open. So the whole concept of the pounding, and then I literally smelled, like, blood has that irony smell, you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. That metallic irony smell. I smelt it. Hearing, and it literally made my whole body just tense when she was doing the pounding. Like, yes. Right? Like
it definitely, it was a visceral image.
She got absolutely to such a visceral way where I was like, you know, Lori, I don't know what else I could have done in that situation, because I don't know if I ever could have stood by and let that happen.
Because your knee-jerk reaction is to stop it, right?
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
She has and that's where the next part comes in, where I go, I do think this job has gotten the better of her. Because at the beginning, we already know she's had some type of physical altercation already, because she has the bandage on her face and she's been off as well. So clearly this isn't the first situation she's had to be involved with, where she's had either some type of physical altercation with a student where she's had to step in and help or something. I can't remember the exact reasons of why she was away or whatever happened there on her face earlier in the piece. But it's that thing of you being in that situation, that traumatic situation, a few too many times, and now you are in such a high state a lot, because, like, she's a very loud, very big character, and when she went softer after when she was saying, I thought he was going to kill him, that made me think almost she puts on that vibrato of that big energy, big person, because she's such a small little lady. That's her defense mechanism of dealing with people, as she says, who are 6 feet tall and who have arms built like tree trunks. That she has to find some way of making herself the authoritarian in the room, and that's her go-to move. And I think if she said she's been there a long time dealing with this, I think after a while you've got to get out, because mentally, clearly something is going on with you now, where we're like, you've been there a really long time in this trench, and there's some type of, I don't think we use the term PTSD anymore, whatever that new term is, that post-traumatic stress situation, where she's done this quite a few times now, and there's something there that gets triggered within her when she gets into those situations. And if she's already willing to hit a student with a broom to break up a situation, what happens next time if there's a much less violent situation, but she overreacts because of something else inside her. That I think I think this situation really proved that she does need to get out. She needs to she needs to ask for a transfer and go and get out of that situation, because clearly there's some bigger things at play with her character. Right or wrong, like, dedicated teacher, God bless you. We need teachers like her who are willing to stay in those schools and work with those students. But I think after so many years of dealing with these types of situations, and the stress and the frustration of it, of not having the support you need, I think she's at the end of her rope. Yeah, that's me. Alicia, what are your thoughts?
I'm nodding along because I feel like you and Andrew basically had similar points to me. But when I first watched it, I was like, she's correct. She did what she had to do. Mm-hmm. And then when I was looking at the questions again before we started this today, I was just like, nah, she was actually, no, I don't think I would have done that. But I'm not in that situation, but I don't think, like, was Lori right to hit that student with a broom? No is my answer. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just because it's not like protocol. Mm-hmm. Teachers shouldn't be doing that to their students. And like, but as a human being, I'm on Lori's side, mm-hmm. but because it's in a classroom, mm-hmm. and there's rules and guidelines, I can't agree. But it's so frustrating, just that scene, and she's going off, mm-hmm, like she's ripping Dune apart. Mm-hmm. Like, it's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. That's the thing that sucks. Like, Dune just happened to not be near his buzzer that one time.
Mm-hmm. Well, he says he's dealing with another situation. He's one of the 8 people who were looking after this entire school, who are dealing with millions of fires. It's like,
and probably the most responsible out of those 8, at least for what we're.
That's what he says. I mean, he's got the one security guard who's flirting with students, one security guard who's stealing laptops. Like, he seems to be the most. I think he says the last line of defense. I am the last kind of like soldier at the post, mm-hmm. but I can only do so much. I can only be so many places at once. It's that,
exactly. So, oh my gosh, that scene. And I think emotionally watching it, I was completely on board. Like, as an audience member, I was like, Lori did what she had to do. She did what she had to do. Yes. But as someone who's analyzing it afterwards, mm-hmm. I changed my mind and realized, like, I don't think I agree with what she did. I understand why she did it. Yeah. And then I started to think, why a broom? And that really bothered me. Because a broom? Ouch! Of course, she wanted to immediately stop the fight, but I started to think of other things, like maybe she could have used her shoe. But that's the point is she hit somebody. And I guess the broom part.
The broom makes sense. I mean, it's distance, right? It's got a long handle. If you got
she's able to keep her distance. It kind of, even though it's prickly, it's sort of soft enough that it's not going to like bludgeon him in the face. Like, I can think of logistically why a broom is a good choice for the job.
Like, her whole thing with the broom, she goes like, she goes, I wanted to get his attention. Because she goes, he wasn't responding when I yelled at him to stop. I got to somehow get him to stop pounding the kid's head in and just step back. So I can see why, but I don't know. I'm trying to picture what broom it would be, because I know in my school we had push broom like that
right.
wide. So it wouldn't be like a corn broom that's like a little bit softer. So it's now semantic of a broom.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Until this point, I hadn't fathomed that she hit them with the bristles. I always thought it was the handle.
I was assuming the handle as well.
Because I feel like sweeping the guy off him isn't as effective.
Well, that's true. Baton,
good point. I kind of know if I was directing the show, I would want her to come into that scene holding the broom still, just so we have no ambiguity of what kind of broom, and then she could like even mime the swinging of it, like, or not mime because she'll be holding it, and then we will just solve all these questions and we'll know exactly because it's so hard to come up with a moral judgment when we don't know the specifics. Like, it's been said already that we only have her testimony to go on. Now there is a film, like somebody was recording it, because that was stated.
Yes.
We don't get to see that film.
We don't get to see it, the audience, but like, I wonder what story that would tell, because
I guarantee you, if it's a thing of anything with those types of recordings, it's always the split second before the big moment. You never get, because nobody knows to film the lead up. You always get the moment.
Although they were fighting prior to that, so someone could have been.
True.
And then happens to catch the teacher hitting one of them with a broom.
Right.
Just like from my own perspective, like I feel like any point that I had coming into this has kind of already been said by one of the three of you. But I think the big takeaway that I have is this is a no-win situation.
Absolutely.
Either she stands by and the kid possibly dies, or she intervenes and breaks protocol and is the bad guy in the situation. So I think the fact that we are struggling with this is the point. Like, Morisseau has come up with a very difficult situation that I'm sure happens in actual schools all the time, but for the sake of the drama of this scene, she has done a great job of presenting it like a truly tragic instance where nothing she could have done would have been the right answer.
I want to see a like spin-off like 12 Angry Men type play of like the school board having to adjudicate this situation. Kind of like a courtroom drama of playing out what happens with Laurie afterwards.
Or one of them takes out their own separate broom and jams it on the table. What? It's an identical broom. Oh, this changes everything.
That broom wasn't sold anywhere else.
I'd hella watched that. Yep.
Yep. There we go. Okay. Wonderful. Well, let's head into the last question, which deals with the catalyst event of this entire piece, which is Omari shoving his teacher after, because they've been talking about the same poem that his mom was talking about. The teacher's pressing Omari to answer the question.
It wasn't the same poem.
It was a short story or something.
It was a novel. Yeah,
yes,
novel.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. So the teacher's pressing him to answer the question. Omari doesn't want to answer the question because he's feeling persecuted and he's having a bad day. Omari tries to leave, apparently, and the teacher stops him, so Omari shoves, or in some cases we hear slams the teacher into the smartboard. So do we think, because this is the most filled out part of the story that we get a lot of different interpretations of this moment, even though we don't actually see the video. But this is like kind of like the 12 Angry Men courtroom case that gets debated throughout the piece. Do we think Omari is justified in shoving his teacher? Alicia, we'll let you start this one.
Okay. Similar to what I said about Laurie's actions, is Omari justified for shoving his teacher? I don't think he is. If I was watching this as a student, I know I have a different opinion. But just watching it as just a regular old civilian, I don't think violence was the answer in that case. I wish he could have just got up and left, but I totally understand the feeling of being cornered and feeling othered, and when someone's pressuring you about something and you're just not in the right headspace and you react, and I totally get that. I just feel so bad for Omari in general. And he's just so troubled, and he has some issues within his family life, and of course he's at this private school where he doesn't really fit in. Oh gosh, I feel so bad. But I don't think he should have reacted that way, and he should have pushed him. But I also wish the teacher wasn't such like a bad teacher, and you can sense when kids are uncomfortable with answering something, and you can sense, I feel like you can generally get a sense when you've gone too far, or people should be able to. So I'm not on the teacher side. I'm just not on the side of like violence, I guess. So I don't think he's justified. I totally understand it. Like, because I'm thinking of the word, what does justified mean in that sense? Like, I get why he did it. Totally get why he did it. And honestly, if I was a student, I might have done the same thing. Yeah, but I don't know. Then again, I don't know. I guess I'm changing my answer as I go along. I'm changing my answer as I go along.
It's absolutely hard to tell unless you're in the situation, right? Like, it's so emotional. I totally understand where you're coming from. It's like, I don't know what to do, and because I don't know what to do, I don't know who to agree with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on the side of and just say like I don't think pushing was the right thing to do, but I totally get why he did it, and like if I was a student, I would probably do the same thing. So that's my answer on this.
Fair enough. Andrew?
Oh boy. Alicia, you said a lot of like really cool things. Wow, I don't even know where to start. I took like notes as you were talking, like, oh yeah, that was really good. I don't even know where to start though. I think it's important to I'll actually pose the question. Omari, when he's talking to his father, when he's talking to Xavier, he says, I pushed him thinking it was you, and I would have pushed him again. I'm inclined to think, because Mackie had said, like, we don't know the actual circumstances and there's different takes on it. Omari starts off by saying, I just pushed him a little. But then by the end, I get this impression that no, he really did shove him. And he shoved him hard. And he had like some intent behind that. Now, but again, that's just my interpretation based on that one interaction. And it could have solely just been because Omari was trying to dig at his father. He could have just said that. So I don't know that, but there's just a lot of precipitating like factors into what Omari did, and we really don't get the we don't get that view of like what the teacher did. But I also wonder if there was this, and I'm not saying this is the case, but like if Omari felt a little bit more persecuted in that moment than he was, and I think that could speak to the whole play's message. There was not enough space. There's just this weight put on Omari's and Black people of color's like shoulders that they have to bear, and it feels as if, and maybe it is the case that the world is against him and that the teachers are against him, the education system's against him. And I just feel like there's so many things that led up to that moment that, Alicia, as you said, it totally makes Omari feel othered. And then he lashes out. And the whole novel they were reading speaks to that. And you wonder, would I do the same thing? Would I be right in doing the same thing? I'm inclined to agree with Alicia and saying no, because it's not the answer, but it's certainly reactionary. It's kind of what almost he was led to. And I think that's just that's the sad part, is that, was he justified? No, but what else was going to happen? Like it was just two forces coming to a head, and that's what, and it ended up in Omari shoving the teacher. Also, I do agree with you though, Alicia. The teacher's being a bit of a dick. Like, sorry,
piggyback off of that, like, because so I also have very mixed feelings about this, but I think the amount of dickery that this teacher is doing cannot be like overstated. Because not only does he single out the one Black student, presumably the one Black student in the room with this, like, I don't even want to call it a microaggression because it's pretty macro, but he also threatens to give him a 0, threatens his grade if he does not participate and contribute his perspective in this discussion. And like, that is not something that a teacher should do, like, ever. Like, it's one thing to try to engage the student, as Naya tries to defend the teacher's actions early on. It's like, it's his job to engage you, but you say you will fail this class unless you explain to us the Black experience in America. Like, that is not okay for any teacher to do. And if that alone had been the end of it and someone had caught that on their camera phone, that teacher would be in a lot of hot water. Of course, that's not the moment the phone came out, as we talked about the moment that the phone happens here. And I think, like, I think especially like lately in the news cycle, we've heard a lot about like riots, but I think this applies to violence in general, is the language of the unheard. And Omari is unheard in that moment. He's trying to tell the teacher, please, I don't want to talk about it. I'm not in the mood. And this teacher keeps pressing. So eventually, I can completely sympathize with it manifesting in this outburst of aggression. And then hearing the subtext of what was going on through his head with Xavier just gives even more potency to that. Mm-hmm. That said, in addition to just general violence isn't the answer most of the time. Like, in addition to that sort of pacifist reason for why he probably shouldn't have done it, I can think of two other very big reasons why, heat of the moment aside, looking back on it, it was probably a very big mistake. And one of them is that if part of his anger is due to the fact that this teacher is equating me to the character of Bigger Thomas in his animal outburst of violence, he's proving the teacher's assumption right in doing that. And like we can talk, there is, this discourse of self-fulfilling prophecies in that, but I think, if he could have just found a way to just like storm past without shoving and just march out the door, that would have been a better form of protest that wouldn't have proved the teacher's racist assumptions correct. Secondly, I don't think the teacher is going to learn from this experience. He's the victim now. He might, at best, the lesson he'll take from this is, maybe I shouldn't press my minority students for their perspectives because they might attack me. But then that's learning out of fear, not out of respect for his students. And he's just gonna, take the lesson of, man, what can you do with these minority students? In my school, of course they're gonna be violent against me. And I think, a little bit of more restraint on Omari's part would have circumvented these pitfalls to the scenario, as much as I can understand his reasoning for doing it. And the heat of the moment, of course, is a huge part of that.
Mm-hmm. Again, I think the saddest thing that we're kind of all alluding to is that, like, if we all sit here now going, maybe it wasn't the best decision, but like, it's so sad going like that this kind of thought process doesn't occur in that moment.
Yeah.
And when you're pushed to that, sometimes you just kind of react how you want to react. And at that point, he was reacting against his father, and sadly, the teacher was just he was the catalyst for that. And like you said, Ryan, it's totally a self-fulfilling prophecy because he eggs that on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say for me, first off, I am a white male, so I cannot speak to the BIPOC experience in how they feel in these situations. All I can do is look at it from what the evidence we're given in this play. And I have to say, Omari's not justified. He is not justified in what he does. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are. Assault is assault. It is not the answer. We have all been in school where we have all had the dickish teacher who is pushing our buttons. I had a drama teacher like that who literally told me I should not go to university because I couldn't write worth a damn. Screw you. Like, we've all had these teachers. I had math teachers who were cold fish, who were who were not helpful at all, who I would have loved to have yelled and screamed and said, help me, I'm frustrated, I don't get it, you're not helping me, like, stop. But yeah, like, assault is assault. You do not have the right, unless that teacher is physically assaulting you and you are feeling your life is threatened, you do not have the right to do what he did. Plain and simple. And this is his third offense. Is it like, if this was his one-time offense where, like, this was the one bad day and he acted out like this is his third offense doing this. So clearly this has happened before, which makes me question, how is this teacher asking the questions? Because we only get Omari's point of view of, like, his perspective of how the teacher was asking the questions. The teacher could just be asking the question. Omari's taking it his way because of his internal monologue that's going on with his dad and the feelings. And so we don't know what this teacher was like. I also question why they're studying this piece in a school that it is, from what I understand from Jasmine and Omari, it's a very white school. So to be studying a piece of work like this and then trying to explain it and study it, I go, of course you're going to now get tokenism, because like which is wrong in many, like you shouldn't be like one person should speak for the entire BIPOC community because you're in my class this one time and we're studying this piece. Like, why they're studying that piece, I go, that's a bigger question right there. Is there a better piece that you should be studying besides this one piece? But overall, I just go, physical assault is physical assault. You don't get to do that no matter how bad of a day you're having. Andrew, you and I were in many of your classes. We were frustrated with the teachers. Mm-hmm. But we don't get to do, and I get it. You're a teenager. Your emotions are high. You're not always thinking clearly. I get it. Mm-hmm. But we all have been there. And I don't know all of our histories, but I don't think any of us have ever shoved a teacher. So as much as we've all wanted to, probably at some point, we've all been frustrated that way. Doesn't mean we do it. Like, as much as I sympathize with Omari, feeling persecuted, feeling othered, the plain and simple fact is no, you don't do it, especially when you've clearly been told this more than once. Mm. This has been a repeated thing. His mom has given him repeated advice of, if you're feeling this way, you say, teacher, I gotta go see my counselor. I am not in the right headspace. He's been given the resource to get out. He's been told this is what you gotta do. Like, and yet he chose this route, which makes me go, sometimes maybe some tough love is now needed. Like, as much as I sympathize with Naya in this moment, and she's pleading with the board, saying, please don't give up on my son. Don't do this. At some point, I gotta go, 3 times this has happened. Now we gotta start laying, like clearly this one tactic isn't working. Maybe we gotta get a little tougher here and give you some stuff. We gotta tackle this from New England. Like, his dad may have a point when he goes, we need to be tougher on him. We need to try a new tactic, because this tactic we're doing right now isn't working and it's not helping the situation. So for me, I just go, Omari, I sympathize with you, but I can't justify what you did, no matter how many ways you spin it at me. Like, I know my parents wouldn't accept it. They would go, nope, you were in the wrong here. Like, plain and simple.
I think that I'm correct me if I'm wrong or if I'm interpreting correctly, but I think we're all saying more or less Omari shouldn't have pushed the teacher.
I think it's our consensus as a group.
But it just kind of just going off of the how you said, like, sympathizing with Naya talking to the board. Again, it's that moment where the board's not helping. I don't know if suspension would help. I don't know if banning him would help. Like, it just feels like there's, while I don't defend the fact that Omari pushed his teacher, there's just these deeper underlying issues at play.
Absolutely.
And it's a matter of, like, how to address them. Maybe I don't know. I don't even know if being tougher is the answer. I think there should be some kind of potentially penalty, but the fact that the fact that he's done something 3 times tells me something's wrong. We're doing something wrong. Even the way we're addressing it is wrong. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, and I totally think that's the case by the end of the play, where we're assuming something and it's not working. We have to change our tactic, because what we're doing right now isn't producing the result that we want. Omari's no less angry. Omari's no less violent. He's more violent. He's lashing out. It's it's just like there has to be responsibility taken on the people of the school that you need to change something. But yeah, I do agree. It's something wrong. He's done something wrong. He has to kind of live with those consequences. But it's how we address that after that point that I think is a very important question and issue to deal with. I don't know if you guys agree or not. That's my hot take.
Yeah, I agree. I think roughly we're all on the same page of Omari lashed out and, like, bad things happened. But I want to say that, like, sometimes I don't condone violence, but within history, sometimes physical altercations have happened and violence has occurred and history has moved forward from there. But you have to pick and choose your battles. And I think Amari, the way he reacted, I don't think anyone has learned from it. Amari's going to be angry, as Andrew was saying. He's not. It's his third strike, and as Ryan mentioned, the teacher probably won't learn from it either. So who's moving forward from this altercation? No one really. It's tough. It really is tough.
I have a follow-up question. I feel like this is a big can of worms as we're very close to the finish line. So we might not unpack this to our satisfaction. But like, I'm curious, in the moral logic of the play itself, does the play, or by extension our author, think it's justified? Because we are engaging from the outside as like receivers, but I kind of get the sense that the author knows exactly what she thinks, and the play operates on a specific logic of who's right and who's wrong, or if it was an okay action to take. And I'm curious if others have thoughts on this.
I think the playwright is leaning more on the side of Omari because we get the list of 10 at the end, and that seems to be, and we don't really get the verdict of the board. It's more left on the Omari, like, hear me, play fair, the list of 9 to become 10. Things that the instructions that as his mom wanted. So that makes me think that the playwright's a little bit more on the Omari side of the situation.
Robitussin.
Thank you.
Hashtag not sponsored.
So I think the playwright's a little bit more on the Omari side of the situation, because clearly they build it up with the dad scene as well, where it's like, Dad, you pushed me to this point. I was angry at you that day. Clearly, the playwright is working for us to be more on the sympathetic end of Omari than just like the Lori situation. We don't know the full picture. With the Omari situation, we clearly know, at least from Omari's point of view, what went on internally as well as externally.
I think that the playwright's leaning more towards Naya's opinions. And I think just because we start off with Naya and we're on, I felt attached to her journey the most. So I think it's kind of a mix where Naya was reprimanding him for pushing the teacher when she first heard, but then she was fighting for her kid to not be not for charges not to be pressed. So I think it's a mix of like, I'm still gonna fight for this person because they were in the wrong, but I think more so Naya's side of Amari being in the wrong. Maybe that's what the playwright was thinking. What about everybody else?
Andrew?
I'm inclined. I think I agree with Alicia in the sense that it's a mix. It feels like a mix. It feels almost like a call to action, where the playwright's not condoning what happened, but more so making a comment going, this is not an unusual occurrence. There are students who feel like this. There are students who act like this. And the steps that we're taking as is are failing those students. And while we don't condone it, we can't condone it because that it isn't the answer. A violent outburst isn't the answer. We still have to address why that violent outburst occurred. Not to take responsibility off of the person who acted out, but it's still something that we have to go, all right, this is a thing that happens. This is a recurrence. There's a pattern. We have to figure it out, and we have to understand how to prevent it. So in that sense, I think it is still taking Naya's perspective. Like, it shouldn't have happened. Why did it happen? What do we do? Kind of deal. And like Ryan said for the Lori incident, it's a lose-lose situation. But at least this is the Lori incident is. But we have to take what occurred and learn from it. I think that's kind of where I lost the name. Dominique Morisseau. I remember the last name. Dominique Morisseau is kind of leaning towards. potentially.
Yeah, there we go. Andrew, well said. Does anybody else have anything else to piggyback onto that, or have we reached the end of this review? Are we all thumbsing up here? There we go. Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you everybody so much for tuning in for this wonderful review. Our general assistant, thank you to Jill for recommending this play to us to review. Much appreciated. Stay tuned. We have some more really fun reviews coming. Majority of them will be from Broadway HD, but we can announce that we will also be using the new platform Stratford or Stratfest at Home, which is the new digital platform for the Stratford Festival, where they have all their streamed productions as well as some ones they're pulling out of the archives, like Elizabeth Rex starring the late great Brent Carver. So stay tuned for some really fun reviews coming from that platform as well. In the meantime, Alicia, where can people find you and your work?
Oh, that's a good question. I made an artist Instagram. I'm going to tell you what it is right now, currently looking at my phone to find it. I need more followers, so
we will follow you.
So my artist Instagram is @ItIsAliciaPlummer. Follow me on there.
All one word and no punctuation.
All one word, 0 punctuation.
Nice.
You'll find me.
You got it. Good job.
Wunderbar. Andrew, where can people find you?
Interesting
if you want
question.
Strangers following you.
I don't mind. As long as it's not like following me home, I don't mind. Funny enough, I was supposed to create an artist account today. I did and then didn't. You know what? Let's say that if you follow me there at firstname.s.lastname, I don't know how to better.
We will put it in the video description.
Yes,
so people can find you there.
And if you do make an account within the next few days, this will take a few days to go up between filming and
totally
release.
fine.
So send it to us. Yeah.
I have 0 followers. I made it today, but follow me there because that's my professional account. So you can reach me there if you need me for professional things. Professional guys.
Professional. Love that. Love that. Ryan, give us your classic Ryan sign off.
I'm not on most social media, and I don't want friend requests from strangers in the one that I am on. I'm sorry if I don't know you. I'm probably not going to accept your friend request on Facebook, which I don't even use that much. So yeah, just send all that love to Cup of Hemlock Theatre, and yeah, it'll be better served there. If you're a fan of me, literally everything I share on Facebook is just these episodes when they come out anyway. So
love that. And you can find me at all social media platforms at Mackenzie Horner. You can follow my podcast, Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast, on all social media platforms as well. As of this recording, we have just released our penultimate episode of season 2, which is none other than the Mel Brooks musical comedy, The Producers. So you can go on out, give it a listen, and then we'll be wrapping up our season 2, which we'll be revealing this coming Friday, with a very popular teen angsty musical written by the late great Jonathan Larson. So we'll let you figure out.
Wonder what that could be.
I know, right? So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, though, everybody stay tuned for more great content we have coming your way in November, as well as the rest of October. In the meantime, everybody, thank you all. Have a great rest of your weekend. Stay healthy, stay safe. Bye!